So, the last agent of socialization that we're going to discuss is the mass media. I don't think it comes as any surprise to anybody that the media is recognized on its own as an agent of socialization. And I also don't think it comes as a surprise to anybody that the role of the media as an agent of socialization has increased tremendously in the last couple decades, particularly because of the internet. If you look at figure 3.3 in the textbook, you'll see the estimates of how much time is spent interacting with some kind of media dependent on a person's age. There's an entire chapter dedicated to the media in the textbook. It's not included in this course, but it is worth taking a look at it just for interest's sake. In our current discussion of socialization, in regards to the media as an agent of socialization, it really focuses on gender roles specifically. The behaviors associated with widely shared expectations about how males and females are supposed to act. So you're not born masculine and you're not born feminine. Those are norms and expectations that you're taught through various agents of socialization. Think about it. Why are male babies often wrapped in blue blankets and female babies usually wrapped in pink? Because society tells us through gender socialization that is what is appropriate for a male baby or a female baby. Why do a lot of little girls like to play with dolls and a lot of little boys usually play with cars or trucks? It's not because of some genetic biological reason, it's because they have been socialized to have those preferences. Feminist sociologists strongly argue that people learn gender roles in part through the mass media. And I love talking about this with students, encouraging them to recognize how they've been socialized according to their gender without having any idea that it's going on. So think about what it's like for little girls growing up in Western society. For little girls, one of the first feminine stereotypes regarding gender roles that they encounter are princesses. Snow White and Prince Charming was the main one when I was growing up, and Cinderella. But in the last 20 years, this whole princess ideal has absolutely exploded. It has catapulted everywhere. And there's even a term for it, the Disney princess ideal, or princess culture. This princess culture is the subject of quite a bit of criticism, not just from feminist sociologists or from active feminists, but also just from everyday women who feel that this princess culture, this princess ideal, is problematic for a few reasons. First, this ideal is perceived to teach little girls that they must always have a man in their life to be happy and fulfilled. That it's always the man who should look after them and take care of them, instead of them learning to take care of themselves. And thus, independence is not something they should consider important. It's theorized that this princess culture helps girls to develop without a sense of confidence, without a sense of feeling capable, not wanting to try new things as much as they would if they were boys. Another reason the princess culture is heavily, heavily criticized is for the way all these princesses look. I'm just going to go back to the previous slide for a second. And I can't remember her name, but the princess from Aladdin right there in the middle with the tank top on. I mean, look at how tiny her waist is. Look at the mermaid and how tiny her waist is. So this princess culture is, for many girls, their first exposure to the thin ideal that a lot of women struggle with as adults. This is an ideal the vast majority of women will never achieve. And this really can affect a woman's self-esteem. This feeling that they should always be thin. So this suggests to little girls that they should strive for this feminine ideal as well as the only norm or the expected norm. Barbie is a huge criticism of this as well. And lastly, the princess ideal is heavily criticized because most of the princesses presented in movies are feminized to the extreme, as we've just seen. Some people would argue they're not just feminized, but they're highly sexualized in a manner that is out of line and inappropriate. For example, I haven't seen Brave. I've seen a lot of Disney movies, but I haven't seen Brave. This is the Disney movie Brave, which is about a Scottish princess named Merida, if I'm saying that properly. And the image on the left is the image that ended up making it into the movie. But the image on the right was the original suggestion. So let's look at this. Much, much more feminized, kind of like really, really, the sleeves on her dress go right off her shoulder because that's what a woman would be wearing when she's shooting an arrow, right? This garnered a lot of attention. The top of her dress was changed from going over the shoulder to be off the shoulder. Her body was quite a bit slimmer. They tamed her hair, made her hair wilder instead of, the way it would be. And because of the backlash about this, Disney slightly changed the character. So it begins with this overwhelming avalanche of princesses when they're young in the media for little girls. And feminist sociologists argue that it then continues when they grow up, when they're presented with magazines and advertisements and cartoons and TV shows that encourage all of the same. In addition to always being polite and passive, not being too loud, don't be too much of a go-getter like a man should be. And these normative expectations presented in the mass media are continued still as they become teenagers with music videos and what the lyrics of the music say with magazines like Vogue and Cosmopolitan, all of which have teen versions as well, with articles in them about pleasing a man and how to keep a man happy. Now, we don't tend to hear about restrictive gender role socialization in the media regarding boys as much as little girls, but it is absolutely there for them as well. From an early age, little boys are generally socialized and taught that it is their role, the job of the man, to be responsible and be a good provider, to be the main provider for the family. That it's a man's role to always look after everything, and little boys also have their own physical expectations as well. From an early age, boys are often simply expected to have an interest in sports. That is the norm, simply the way it is. And all of the sources of socialization in the media for girls send this message to boys. From an early age, boys are taught by the media that they should be muscular and dominant and aggressive in a go-getter kind of way, and to speak up for themselves, and not to be too passive or emotional. Don't be a wimp, be a man. Or man up. I hate that expression. Not only is the media a major agent of socialization regarding gender roles, but the chapter makes a really good point that I don't think we all acknowledge as much as we should. And that is that we tend to be more open and accepting to those influences in the media that are more permissive, that are more constant. That we tend to accept these influences that fit with cultural standards we already have. And we tend to accept them that are the most appealing to us. So all of the influence regarding media in relation to gender roles kind of becomes its own perpetuating cycle, constantly reinforcing itself. Now, does this change over time? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. But I would personally argue that this hasn't changed as much as people think it has. Walk down the toy aisle at Walmart, and especially at Christmas when it's really fully stocked, you don't need to ask which aisle has the toys that are supposed to be for girls and supposed to be for boys, because it's a sea of pink. And at some Walmart stores I've been at, in the girls' toy aisle, they'll even put down like this self-adhesive pink plastic carpet on the floor to go over the tiles, just in case there's any question about whose aisle this is. So little girls almost can't escape the whole princess ideal at a certain age. They're smothered by it, everything they come into contact with. Cartoons, live-action TV shows, coloring books, Halloween costumes, their everyday clothes, toys, all of it is based on this. So we have these four agents of socialization that I've discussed. We've got the family, school, peers, and the media. Be aware that these are not the only agents of socialization. I mean, I would personally argue that even apart from school, that the post-secondary system should be its own separate agent of socialization. The workplace is an agent of socialization. All of these combined send a very definite message about what you should be doing.